Okay. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let's call the meeting to order. In tonight's meeting, we're going to start out with a public hearing on our proposed FY23 proposed budget and FY22 budget amendments. So does anybody have any questions, comments, concern? Anybody in-house here?
The hearing, yeah.
Yeah, we did the hearing.
Right, are we talking both last year's amendment? Or are we
So-
talking about this year's?
So we'll do the FY23, the proposed budget first.
Because I could not read it on the screen, can you give me an overview? Help me. Along with what page to look at?
If you go towards the back, actually, if you start back there, it's got the summaries. of all of them.
What page?
I think it's 2 or 3 pages from the back.
Yeah. It's
like
not
103.
actually numbered.
So, yes.
If you start with that about like third page, it's got a 4-year summary there. That's the one that we published.
Okay. Okay.
So when you say 4-year summary, help me understand this.
Yep, so you've got your 2019, 2020, and then your 2020 and 2021, 21, 22, and then comparison with the 2023.
There you go. You're on it.
Okay, thank you.
So you can see on, it has your revenues and expenditures separated there. On the left side of that graph is our general fund. And then on the right side is all other funds, which would be our special funds, our title grants and forest funds and items like that.
Sorry.
And then so you can see for the proposed budget for 22, 23, for the general fund is at 11,933,096. And then for the other funds, it's at 6,913,676.
So the change in taxation values added a little bit how much to our levy.
No, we go off of a flat rate, not the percentage. So it's a flat dollar rate of 2.685 is what our levy is.
So it says here 2689.
Mhm. Yeah, and there's some back taxes that get, like late taxes, those type of things that get figured in. That will vary every year. But generally it's 2.685 is what we pass on the levy.
And what's the other local?
Other local can consist of local grants and stuff like that. So that amount I put in there is an estimate just based on kind of what we received the previous year.
The federal revenue for the 1.57, that's the Craig Wyden. Secure rural schools.
No, federal programs would be any of the title programs. Yeah. So Title I through Title, what is it, 5 is where we don't get Title 5, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So anything from professional development to our Title I support for reading and math. There's a bunch of different things that go in there. There's some safe schools money. There's some other things. So all that federal programs. And those have not changed much.
So that does include the safe routes or the secure rural school funding. It's
Yes.
part of that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's what I asked.
Yep.
Okay, great. And then the projection of 605,000, other.
Oh, other sources. That one. Trying to think.
Yeah. So
That-
there's things like interest as well on there. There's other, I think we have some grants and things in there as well. Have to look at the details.
It's quite a bit more.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's why, yeah.
Mhm.
Quite a bit more than it has been.
About the 2021.
Oh.
Right, so much federal money coming in. Yeah.
So.
There's a few.
Yeah.
Just kind of give you a summary of what it was last year on our audit. Some of those other revenues were things from some was a little bit from our forest reserve. There's some money there that flows through from our Youth Challenge Academy. Some of that's a flow through, so that's considered other income, but it actually offsets what our expense is. School lunch, there's a little bit in there from that, so some cash coming in. And then there's some other governmental funds, which is miscellaneous things such as small grants or small donations from different various groups and state or whatever it might be. So
where's the bump of almost 120,000, 170,000?
So just in general, our youth challenge would be increased just from any kind of increase in wages or operating expenses there. So as that flows through state revenue, we would have that expense as well. So that's probably the majority of it, just from wages, and then also the O&M, the operation piece of it that comes through as well.
Okay, so I kind of assumed the youth challenge would have been in state revenue, but so that's just the seat allocation.
So yeah, the way it flows through is the thing, we get it from the state,
Yeah.
but yet we have to pay our employees and then we get reimbursed from the youth challenge.
Well, I understand that. But
Yeah.
I'm just
And
So
that
why
becomes
isn't
part
it
of it
as state revenue. Why wasn't it identified as? state
because
revenue?
it's identified in state, then it's identified again as other revenue. Because it comes from,
twice.
yeah,
So it comes
Yep.
in apportioned by the state and then we pay it to the youth challenge and then they pay us back again.
right. We pay it to the employees
Mhm.
and then they pay it back to reimburse. So it shows us as a reimbursement more than anything. So it's listed.
So that's also under the youth challenge program, right?
Mhm.
That same amount?
Mhm. I believe so. We'd have to look on there. Yeah. As we do adjustments on the audit, but yeah, that should be the same.
So everybody's getting a big raise.
But the budget decreased year over year. If I'm reading this right,
And where are you looking?
I'm on page 14,
Okay.
based on the computer, under Challenge Academy expenditures. It's got 1.9 last year. This proposed is 1.6. Or alternative school program.
Yeah, I'm trying to find your page here. No.
Yeah.
So yeah, we went down 300,000. Page 7 from the- or 14, page 7 from you.
Okay, thank you.
So salary and benefits 416 plus 121, is that the revenue?
It's close, 640,
Yeah.
just
So-
under.
And 604.
I'm still not following the
Plus
page.
the state revenue, which we did the bus and seats.
Mhm. Yeah, but that's quite a bit more. There.
Well, but that's for everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just a single line item in that section. Yeah. So my computer says page 14.
Oh, gotcha. So you're,
So I'm asking that why is such a decrease in budget?
so prior year. I don't have the answer to that one. What was budget last year? I'd have to look back on that and see. It should be an increase, but. Yeah, I don't have the answer to. 194. Could have been how it was categorized to. I don't know. Maybe put in there in the budget of, by a different code. I'm not sure, but yeah, the total should be, maybe we separated it out separate. Have you changed anything on the youth academy on how we do that? Is there a difference on that?
With the stipends and stuff that we paid out to, that can change that budget significantly. And so it's showing the actual budget from last year. So the stipends and
There you go.
additional-
Say that with the microphone on. That may, but I don't think it would be that much.
So with the stipends and stuff that also happened this last year, that will make that last year's budget more than normal compared to what it would be proposed for this year.
Does that sound right though, by 300,000?
I'm trying to pull up last year's.
No.
I know it's fairly insignificant, but it's just that it's a, it's an increase
Sure.
without a understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Had a few questions. I'm gonna find my pages here. I did.
Got page number added to this thing.
Yeah, that would be nice.
How about choose?
Where's going, Brian? Page what?
Elementary school program? Yep.
We're tracking it now.
Yeah, the secondary school.
Yeah, 14,209. Yeah, almost.
Just the percentages.
What it
just said,
is.
I recognize the dollar.
Which one are you looking at?
Not counting the first.
Okay.
Controversial.
Where's it at? Okay.
So his next question is going to be on page 11, just count 11 pages. And Michael, are you online? It's page 22.
Okay.
Yep.
And what are you looking at on that one in
So
particular?
on that one, the secondary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the secondary school,
Almost half, so
yeah.
I just was curious, percentage wise, it's a big change.
right. So those are based on what we were actually allocated. Some of those are some of the programs that I believe that's one of the federal programs that we split up, and we're allocated different amounts every year. And we have to put them according to, for example, we'll have paras that we pay out of that, paraprofessionals, and there may be more at the elementary one year and less at the high school or vice versa. And it's never the full salary benefit. It's always a piece of it. So we try to fit it where we can. So that could very well be a change in from secondary to elementary.
Meaning the head count change.
So meaning, yeah, so our,
Like maybe they were at the
Correct.
elementary, now they're going to the junior
Correct.
high this next.
yes.
go.
And the way the dollars are allocated, we never really receive enough for like our whole pool. So we have to pick and choose where pieces of those go. So I would assume that's probably where that's at. It looks like it could easily be that, because we had some reductions in some federal programs in some of the areas this year.
So do we carry the rest of that out of the general fund then?
Mhm. Yes.
And so just to learn how to read this, maybe we should have a workshop. on
Yeah,
how
it'd be
to really
good.
Do this.
Yeah.
I agree.
How to understand this.
Mhm.
So the code 515 that identifies source as well as use.
So go right ahead with the code.
Just the codes on the
general
left
definition.
side.
Did you find that?
Yeah.
The other source?
We're still,
We were still-
yeah, we're signing into different areas at this point. I might have to get back to you.
So if you want to give them a little basic 101 on the coding and how that works. Yeah.
Services.
Yep.
So 515 will be a capital expense
Hmm.
account. So, so our 100 codes are like salaries, 200
Mhm.
codes are benefits, 300s are purchase services, 400s are our supplies and materials, 500s
hang on,
are,
hang on.
oh, sorry.
I see it. Thank you.
Okay, you got it. Yeah, where it's printed across the top there.
That's not the
So-
code. So I'm talking about the code over here on the left. So there's a line and then a code and then a function and programs.
So it'd be the line item of that code. 12, which would follow it.
Mhm.
Well, then you would expect to see dollars over here, but there aren't any.
Right. I'll do that.
Yeah, because we lost our which page.
Oh, this is page 22. So.
Don't change pages because I found it.
So Brian, going back to that, well, that's actually is a capital outlay. So that would be something that probably changed from, we did that from the capital over to a salary or whatever. So we probably needed more to help out with a pair or whatever it might have been, and put less into supplies or capitals in a program.
I know it's not a lot of money. I
Yeah.
just thought, man, that's a
No.
big decrease in funding.
Yep. And those shifts come pretty often based on how much we get from the state or the federal. So those will shift around, and then we try to balance as best we can where the needs are.
I
So,
was
yeah.
concerned we were losing parents or something.
Well, we are.
Well,
Yeah.
hopefully not by
Yeah.
funding.
Right.
That's what we don't want,
Right. Agreed.
or lack thereof, I should say.
I can give more of a breakdown on that.
Okay, it's tracking nomenclature. So fund code, activity code, and then there are other codes. next. Then
Gotcha.
then this is next. So it's
Gotcha.
the track.
And there's actually, the State Department of Education has a document that shows what all of those things are. So that's something that we can also just. send to
Oh, that'd be huge.
That'd be good. Yeah, because we're used to it, but it doesn't make sense to anyone that
Yep.
doesn't work in America.
That'd be great.
Yeah, this is a fairly complicated piece of machinery.
Yeah, well, and like I said, the way this prints out is different than even how we put it into the
Yeah.
system, so
Yeah.
that's why we're,
Yeah.
which page?
Is there a way to tie pages to this or not? Is it pretty set? This is how it prints.
Yeah, it
That's what
just-
you get.
Yeah, so we do everything on the website of Skyward,
Mhm.
and then this is, it is
Yeah.
a plug into Skyward that's
Lot. I mean,
desktop.
percentage
It's
wise.
not something that's, we can't, you push a button and this report
Yeah,
prints.
it's PDF
Yeah,
pretty
you
much
can't
that comes
modify
with.
it. Right, yeah.
I got a good way to reference for future.
So time wise, we are, we need to pass this tonight.
She's the timeline queen. Been pushing that from the beginning. So
Well, July
Yes.
1st.
So
Yeah.
with the Idaho statute, we have our meeting tonight, and then when it gets approved, I have until July 15th to submit all of it to the state, but it has to be approved. This meeting had to be 28 days prior to our July meeting to have that done, so.
I just have two more.
go ahead.
On your computer, page 51. So it's the IDA Part B preschool. We went from 16,000 last year budgeted to 39,000 this coming year is the proposal. More seats, more.
So those grants, the title grants, the IDEA grants, I budget those based on what they're giving us proposed for this next year. And then sometimes with those grants, we have carryover from the previous years. So then
Okay.
come the beginning of the year, once we know how much carryover there is, then I'll do a budget revision to add that back into the budget.
Excellent. And then I've somehow lost my place for transportation. I wanted to talk about transportation. Can you navigate me where that's at?
Transportation is back up in the 100s, which is towards the beginning.
Yeah, I just can't seem to find it now.
How would we
And
find
it
it? By a fund number?
Yeah, so that number down on your right, there's those,
Down or up?
Oh,
or on your
Some
right where
chart,
I showed you
yeah.
those like
Yep,
512.
okay.
So transportation is a 681.
Oh.
And 682 and 683.
Found it.
Okay, John.
I'm on page 5.
It's page 8, I believe, on the computer. Yeah, page 8 at the bottom.
Oh. Okay. 681, 682,
Yes.
correct?
So prior year 704,000. This year's proposed is 769.
Mhm.
My question is that enough?
We actually had that same discussion.
You tell me.
Well-
We'll both know.
Well, and I think too, with that being said, when we're considering the price of diesel, which is also going to affect our food budget and all kinds of other things, huge question mark.
Mhm.
What's your opinion, Derek, Mr.
Well, I think we
Transportation
upped
guy?
Fuel from 62,000 to 100,000. That's what I had her up this year. And I have to look, we're at 70 right now for this year. So it's a question whether fuel's gonna run us over next year. That's what we don't know.
Considering the trend we're on right now, do you think that's a
Last
possibility?
fuel bill was $15,000 for a month. 1,000 at 9 months. At today's price.
Ick.
So where are we at salary wise from year over year then? The proposed budget is 320,000. What did that look like for 21, 22?
For the transportation, is that what you're? No, I'm not finding the right page.
Transportation activities, is that all
I don't know. I found it somewhere.
That's a budget side of the code that I've put me on, transportation activities, because I'm not sure what, I don't have that one on my side. I just have the parts, fuel.
Yeah,
that
so
kind
I,
of stuff on mine, so.
basically what I budget, I base on what our previous year's activity was. And then just taking any factors, trying to predict what it's going to be for the next year.
So field trips, sports, you name it. Okay.
And so it looks like the salaries went, last year they were 339 and this year they're 320. But
Probably a lack of positions, I would
well,
imagine.
we have a few vacant positions that we did put in the budget. And I can't speak to what was put in the budget last year, but this is based on who Derek currently has. And then he has a few open positions. Also has a few people that are not on what we call contract or terms of employment. So they're not benefited drivers, but those people are included. And then also some sub time as well.
Benefited meaning they get salary, they don't get
They
benefits.
just get a straight
Just
hourly wage, but no
wage.
per se, no
Gotcha.
insurance. Yeah.
So how many open positions did we budget for the 320,000?
So let's see. So we added in one. I just have my notes.
Sure.
So we have 1, 2, and then I'd say that probably 2.5 right now in there. But then we also have people that we know are leaving that are currently in this budget. We show them as a vacancy.
That's a mess.
It's really hard to budget the salary side of things, especially after a pandemic, because we had so much substitute expense the last year. So we're just doing our best to encompass all these open positions, what we anticipate for substitutes next year. And we're just doing our best, to get a handle on it.
So do we have like a staffing plan for our bus routes? Like ideally, Derek, if the world was perfect, I'd have this many full-time drivers, have this many non-benefited and this many subs. Do we have something created, a number somewhere in there?
Yeah, and I think Derek shared that with us, didn't you, even last time? I mean, whenever we were talking about proposals on increasing, so we have that. Basically it's all of our routes and then some. So.
Yeah, we only have 14 routes,
Mhm.
and we know that 3 of those are non-benefited routes.
Okay, so 11 are,
So,
right?
yeah, the 11 that are benefited routes currently.
And why are the 3 not in the
We don't
11R?
have enough hours a day to be 20
Okay.
hours a week.
Okay.
How many drivers do we have right now?
Well, I've got 2 that won't give me a solid answer whether they're coming back next year or not. I tried to get them a solid answer today. I'm short 2 right now, for sure, and 2 that won't give me a solid answer on their return.
Have you tortured?
This is of the
I'm
11.
kidding.
Well,
Or
of
this is-
the, well, it would be we're short one at Timberline too, added there at the sped route at Timberline. We've been filling out with a paraprofessional all year, so we're short that one. So that would be we're short 1, 2, 3 drivers. And 2 that may not come back, which would be a total of 5 if they don't come back.
Of the full-time 11
Of the full-time 14.
or the full-time 14? Okay.
And that is not counting Derek,
Okay.
who drives full time.
So you're not in that 14
No.
number.
Wow. That's
I
bad.
guess my biggest concern is I don't think it's enough money. I think we're not paying right. Just simple math. I'm not as good as some of these folks are. That's $22,000 a year. That's $11 an hour, $10 an hour job.
Well,
You're
they
not going
don't,
to keep anybody at that.
but they don't work a 20, 80 hour year.
Well, I understand that. I do, but you're not going to keep somebody at a $10 an hour job. Mrs. C's starts at it. Yeah. And I just think, I mean, money doesn't solve every problem. I can tell you, I work for the state. It doesn't hire everybody. I get that. But I think that's a lot of pressure we're putting on Derek. A lot of pressure we're putting on those drivers.
What is our salary schedule?
So he's not the only area that we struggle with that. So I mean, it's not just drivers. Paras, all of our classified is down there. And we've had that discussion year after year. You know, we got to try to pull it up.
I think we need to start doing it. I understand. I know we can't solve the world's problems today, but those were just the concerns that I had in
Mhm.
looking at this. It's a lot of numbers in there. I'd love to get more support for our drivers and our parents,
Mhm.
everybody.
Yeah.
Um,
Child nutrition, you
but we
name
got
it,
to be about it.
custodians. We're well aware. And I don't disagree with you. I don't think money will be the answer. But
It's
it might
not the sole answer. I
No,
mean, there's-
but it
it's
might
not.
be a piece of it. And we've said that all along. It's not going to hurt anything. May not help, but it's not going to hurt. So
So when's the last time we did a salary schedule analysis?
well, we do that annually pretty much. Yeah.
I don't
I mean,
remember hearing
yeah.
about that, so.
Not since I've been on.
And how do we come up with that market?
So comparing to other local schools in similar positions.
So
is-
like
yeah,
Not Lewiston.
not Lewiston.
Okay.
No.
they're
Usually it's,
obviously
what do we
gonna
say,
be higher.
Lewiston and Lapway. We're going to take those two out. Yeah.
So Candy, Kuski probably.
Yeah. Genesee, Cottonwood,
Yeah.
Troy, you know, all the surrounding.
Do we have the latest one that we did?
I can pull it for you. Yeah.
Okay.
Be nice to compare.
And all that information is, you know, all of that's listed on all their websites as well. So I mean, we can pull whatever we want. It's
Okay.
not something we do it annually.
Trying to help you out, Derek.
Yeah.
It's everybody.
Yeah.
No, it is, but I think that we need to, if you've got 14 driver positions and you got 5 that might not be back, we're in
Mhm.
jeopardy potentially. I appreciate Dr. Garrett driving, but he's our superintendent too. So, and I know Jason drives up there.
Yep.
Brian, do you drive?
Yeah.
You're smart.
Yep.
I wouldn't either. I'd be too nervous.
I don't know if I would have the time to do this. We did do a cost analysis on the bus drivers just recently. Derek has that, so.
Perfect. I just like this, and
Yep.
maybe it did get sent and I just
I don't
didn't see
have
it, but
I'm not-
I'd like to see it. So we
Okay.
can do what we can to help you out. Those are the only questions that I had.
Anybody else? Anything?
You'll get us what that other revenue source is.
Do we have anybody waiting on Zoom, Russell, that's got their hand up wanting to ask anything or comment?
Is it?
Oh.
Oh, so it's everybody in here, perfect.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, whoever you are, thank you. Oh,
So obviously, first time, I'm only a few months still on the board, but this seems like a lot to get over in a short period of time from when we get it to when we have to approve of it. Is there a way to get extra time? Do we have to have another meeting next week to give us time, or?
so there's a lot more variables go into it than just seeing, you know, putting this together. It's been in a work, how long you guys been working on it? For over a month since we got numbers from the state. And there's so many pieces to that. I mean, and negotiations is ongoing right now, which is a huge part of our budget. So we have to take our best guesstimate of how that's going to turn out as well. That got delayed a little bit. So generally we have that, but that time crunch from the time we get the information to the time we have to do this is we had to post it. What was the date?
The 10th.
10th of June. And I think we got the information, what was it, late April? Somewhere in there.
Yeah. So I work on building the budget, the revenue and the expenses for the purchase services, supplies and stuff. And then Fair works on the salaries and benefits side of that. And then we merge together. So I have to wait for her side to come in, which she's been kind of waiting. We wait to see what negotiations does and delay as long as we can to try and make it as accurate as possible. And then we merge together. And then once hers comes in, then I have to go through and revise again to accommodate for that. So it takes a while. So it just depends on how everything else is going as to how quickly we can pull it together. But we do start in about April working on it.
We were delayed on the start of negotiations. too,
Yeah,
which
no, and I
that-
get it all. We do a budget every year too, but you know, we all have time to actually go through it. And haven't had time to go through it, most of us
Yeah.
at this stage, because of when we got it and when we're trying to make a decision. So just trying to figure out how we can
Sure.
do better. Can we be more engaged in April and May when it's just a guess? At least we're talking about it and understanding it. So then we have to make the decision.
And I think you'll see over time, Jesse, is a lot of it becomes pretty redundant. There's some, it's pretty much the same thing. We do a lot of the same things. And then as we change, try to adjust, you kind of have to rob from Peter to pay Paul, so to speak. And those are the changes that are harder to track. But once you've been through it a couple of times, I think you'll be more comfortable. But by all means, I mean, we can try to work towards that however we need to do it. I think a budgeting kind of 101 type thing would be good for a work session, whatever, it'd be great. I think it'd be some good training for everyone.
And with the contracts not done, there's a potential that it's going to increase.
So we
I
took,
doubt it'll decrease. But,
we took some guesstimates on that.
and I get
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
My question, I guess, formality, should it increase by
Mhm.
whatever number?
Right.
We'd make an addendum to that, right?
Yeah.
We wouldn't wait. We would do that fairly quick, I assume.
We can do it either way. So the law only requires us to do, or you as a board to amend it. If you're doing amendments, you can do it once. Like you can do it at your audit or the end. So like what we're doing with that
So we do
summary,
it at the end to make sure in case anything else
Right.
changed.
but we can do it earlier if we need to on some of these major things where it's like this, we could certainly do it earlier, but we tend to do it. It's easier to kind of do all that one time to make those adjustments. Otherwise you kind of get tangled up with this month, with the next month, there's a lot going on with it. So,
Right.
yeah,
Gotcha. And we'll update on that later
Yep.
on, right?
Yep.
So,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And I think everybody's pretty on the same page as far as we don't know what the future holds for some of these things.
Mhm.
The price of fuel, the price of food and all that stuff, I think could potentially throw a monkey wrench in
Mhm.
a lot of stuff. I mean,
Yep.
it's just, there's a lot of unknowns. So I think with that in mind, when we budget, we have to keep in mind that things
Mhm.
could go awry very, very quickly.
Well, and another reason for keeping a little fund balance every year, so we have that
Keep a
ability to,
cushion.
yeah. And you have to remember a budget, I mean, as you all know, is our best guess. It's a guesstimate, it's a guideline. It's not the rule. But any of those amendments, once we adopt that and then we have our audit review, that becomes our final numbers for the year. So really a lot of it is past tense. So this is more of just kind of a guide, best educated guess that we can do.
I seem to remember last year at this time, we had sort of a summary sheet that showed us what we had, fund balance, carryover, where we were carrying in. Do we have that available?
Are you thinking of our audit possibly?
I think
No,
it might be
was-
our budget revisions that we do. So that'll
Yeah.
be coming
Yeah,
up.
and you have that, yeah.
We were done with negotiations by this time last year.
Yeah.
So there is that.
Well, there's a lot of discussion around where we had resources,
Mhm.
or what we could spend those resources on. in-
Right.
In relationships.
Right, yeah, well, there was a lot of grants that came through last year, as you guys all know, and that made it even more difficult. And that's where we see, like, when you see some of the budget from last year being higher than this year, some of those were because some of those grants were paid out or whatever might have been, and that increased that. So you see that budget number. Well, the reality is on a normal year, we would not have that high of amount budgeted on that line item. So that happens quite often. throughout this budget.
Yeah, and I remember discussions about some we had a lot of flexibility
Mhm.
on, which.
Yep, and some we
is-
do not.
yeah, well, and some we did not, and I understand that. And
Yep.
And I personally don't want to get into the deep weeds. I trust you, other than when there's another, it would be nice to know
Mhm.
if we're guessing, if we're carrying in. what that means for us. So that would be my.
And so like, yeah, and that's an estimate. And it even, the other comes down to like, if we sell vehicles and stuff like that, it's really just a other income that we get that was not planned on. We don't know where it's going to come from, a lot of that. So-
Yeah, but you're projecting a dollar amount that you're then projecting to expend, so.
Mhm.
yeah, that would be my only-
Well, I think it'd be nice to know too, because I know there's a lot of open jobs, what that dollar amount is if we don't fill those jobs. You know, it's a budget number, but what is that we're working with? Because if we don't fill those jobs, that's just more on all the people, the Derricks of the world to pick up the slack. So how much of that's in there would be really huge.
Like salary savings.
Yeah, yeah.
So with that, Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we accept the proposed budget for. Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we'll approve it down.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Anybody have anything else at all? Any questions, anything? Okay. All right. With that, we will.
Budget amendments that are on this
Oh,
hearing as well.
I'm sorry. I
Real
forgot
quick,
about that.
so we can run through that.
Forgot we separated it out. You're right.
Yeah, so the budget revisions, I'll pull it up here on the screen as well. Did you guys have that?
Yeah.
Pulled up, okay. So as you can see, these are the budget revisions from what was approved last year at this time of the budget. So this is pretty significant. And the reason this is so significant is most of these are those grants, as you see down through there. So a good part of that 3.3 million was additional stipends and grants and things that we would not normally have had. So we didn't expect those, I guess you'd say, whenever we approved the budget. And this budget as well, this year, we're not budgeting in those grants because they're specifically earmarked for a particular thing. So those would show up on the next fiscal year amendments, if that makes sense. And that's what some of these are.
And we don't do that because we don't know what the ultimate amount is going to be.
That's correct. So with these grants, we are still currently spending them as of today. So then once we get done with this fiscal year, then I can figure out what the actual carryover is, and then I'll revise that back into the budget.
Yeah, most of those grants were multi-year grants. So we would have multiple fiscal years we could spend it in. And that's, for example, what is the SR 2 or the 3 that we're building Timberline with, losing track?
Both, but majority of 3.
Yeah, so that will not be budgeted in the budget, but it'll show up as a revision next year. But we've already paid for some of that this year, so that's part of it as well. Yeah, it's already.
That's exciting to see the
Yeah.
foundation.
Out of that
Gaining.
1.4.
What's that?
The 1.4 number.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Questions, comments, concerns?
So keep in mind, whenever we do these are basically amending the budget, the FY22 budget. We'll go through an audit process beginning in August, I believe. We'll get through that process. They'll be here, to do the audit report in December generally. And then that's where all of this finalized piece comes together. So in December, you'll be approving the audit, which is actually the amendments and the preliminary budget from FY22. And that'll have a full report and summary of all this.
Everybody good on that? Any more questions, comments, concerns, anything? No? Board, are you guys ready to move on? Okay. All right, with that, we will conclude our public hearing on our proposed FY23 budget and our amendments to our FY22 budget. And we can call the regular meeting to order. Can we get a roll call? Here.
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 Thank you, ladies.
All right, we stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. All righty. Can I get a motion for approval of the agenda?
I'll move we approve the agenda for June 20th, 2022.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Do we have any public comment?
We do not.
Moving on to approval of the minutes from our May 16th meeting, and well, we'll do those one at a time.
The October 18th, there was a correction on that, and I sent that. Did you guys get a chance to look at that?
Mhm.
Small correction. I believe Mr. Giroux caught or somebody did.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we want to put that on there to get those correct ones.
And also special meeting on June 1st,
Mhm.
expulsion hearing. So can I get a motion?
I'll move to approve the minutes of the May meeting and the expulsion.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. And we also need to include the October 18th, 2021 correction. Can we get a motion for that?
I'm sorry, I didn't look at it.
Yeah.
That's all right.
That's what I'm
It's
trying to
no-
look at it too, make sure
Yeah.
what the correction was.
Is it the roll call?
So it was a discussion came up about bus driver pay, ironically.
Back in October.
Yeah.
Yeah. So whenever that was, what was written was that pay salary schedule was approved. We went back and watched the video on that and it was not approved. But the recommendations that were highlighted on that particular recommendation was approved. So it was bringing the subs up to, what was it? Subs back entry level driver. And then if you return from a retiree, you came in where you went out, or basically where you went out.
Okay.
So that was the piece, and it was just noted wrong. So we just did that correction. And it had the highlighted items on that particular document was what it was.
I remember that conversation. I'm just not seeing it.
So if you go to the proposed schedule, are you looking at that?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Click on that, and then you'll see the highlighted pieces of that is what was actually approved. And that, it was very particular in the wording on the, so when we,
Okay.
another good,
A lot of other highlights.
Yes,
Yeah.
I was
yeah,
like-
sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it was, the YouTube recording made a big difference on that to make sure we had that cleared up. So, and it was very clear.
I remember the discussion on the details.
Yep.
I'll move to approve that amendment to those.
Perfect.
minutes.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda, financial reports and payment of bills. Does anybody have any questions, comments on any of those?
You can't, they just left.
No.
That's why they got out of here.
Smart. Any non-questions?
Bigger in page numbers. Don't know how.
All right, then, if there's no question or comment, can I get a motion?
Trying to.
Madam Chair, I'll move that we accept the consent agenda.
Thank you.
I'll second it.
Oh, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Okay, reports and recognition. School's out. Yay.
That was the biggest recognition on that one.
I have to say that the graduation ceremonies at both Timberline and Orofino were exceptional. They were very nicely done and they went really well. Very pleased with that.
We just had a discussion about that before the meeting. I was just speaking with Russell about that. So we'd like to be able to broadcast that Timberline one as well,
That
because
would
we're
be good.
doing. So it's just hard to do those that close together and set up the full equipment. So we need to look at if we can spread those apart farther or different nights or whatever it might be, so we can give them that same opportunity.
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah. And we've done it before on the same day, right? Didn't you guys rush and do that one time, the first time? Just once. Russell says, I'm not sure which finger that was, but he said once, I think. Just once.
Well, maybe before graduation time next year, we can look at the whole picture of it and see what we can do differently.
So it's already scheduled.
Mhm. Right. It would
Yeah.
take a calendar amendment.
Needs to be amended as soon as
Yep.
possible.
And we did leave on the calendar, I believe that's the time was up to the local building, but we took a survey on that of what was most favorable for people. So that's how we ended up where we were at. We did survey the staff on that and kids, students, on when they wanted graduation. Yep. Yep. We did. Had a good response too.
Yeah, well, we might want to
Look at it.
look at that in the future and
Well, just to keep it equal,
yeah.
same opportunities, I think is important. So, anyway,
So on the OES report, Denise, what is PBIS, the acronym?
So that's positive behavior intervention support.
Thank you.
Idaho has grabbed PBIS and renamed it, as they're famous for doing. So when you see Brian and I talk about ITBS, it's Idaho Tiered Behavior Systems now, which is basically the same thing as PBIS. So acronyms get confusing, but same thing. Just Idaho wanted to put their name on it.
I really appreciated that you provided terms, an understanding for the map, Brian. I appreciate that. So maybe when you're throwing an acronym at us, you could help.
Sure.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Because sometimes we guess and guess wrong. So
Yeah, I came up with, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm trying to read the sentence and the context.
Always feel free to ask.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes we don't, it's the world we live in, so we just forget. So don't hesitate to ask.
Yeah, I get it. I live in that world, a world.
Any other comments?
That was the only
Good
question.
school year. It was a good year, I think. I mean, compared to others we've had in recent history, I think things went really well. And it seems to be an IDYCA. You guys are getting ready to ramp her back up here pretty quick, huh?
How's your numbers coming up? Good.
And are they all Idaho students or are we pulling from abroad?
They're all Idaho students with at least an Idaho sponsor. So,
So no.
like I said, that means a parent that lives in the state or a grandparent that lives in the state. Has connection to the state and somehow. Most of those kids end up relocating to our state and possibly impacting the environment. So I got a win in that.
Were you going to go over the summary of the map scores for us?
Yep.
That'd be wonderful.
there's a place for our data discussion. And if you want to, unless there's anything else on the reports, I guess you'd ask. It's up to you.
Do we have anything else?
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought they were embedded, so I assumed that.
Oh, no, we have it on Yeah.
We designated a spot for it down below in discussion. But we can certainly pull them out of each one of those.
No, just great reports like normal. You guys do an awesome job keeping us in the loop, and like Chris said, surviving those last couple of weeks. I don't know how you guys did it, and only one executive session meeting, so that's a success, right, Brian?
I was up there I was at the high school a couple times during that time. I don't know how you guys did it. I did it. Yeah. Yeah. Crazy. And I saw some of the teachers up there putting in extra time and extra. There was a couple that were, well, more than a couple, but there were several that were there on the Friday before the last week, getting kids caught up and amped up on their stuff and stuff, which that was really good to see. Really good to see. So, and I'm sure the other buildings were the same. I'm sure. I just happened to see his, but
I think overall it was a good year, but I know there's a lot of exhausted people, a lot of filling in, a lot of it was a grind for sure, especially at the end. I know people are pretty tired. So we're very appreciative of what everybody was putting in there. I know we're running on fumes for
Yeah.
sure.
and I hear pretty good things from students too, which is always good to hear.
Mhm.
I think we had a lot of kids coming into this school year who previously struggled with all the COVID stuff and everything we had going on that finally came into their stride this year, I think. And with a lot of support from the teachers and staff, and I think they've rebounded, a lot of them. So that's good to hear too. And I love to hear I love school, or I love Mrs. So-and-so or Mr. So-and-so and stuff. That just makes my heart smile when I hear that. So awesome job.
Or when you have elementary school kids and they're sad that the teachers are moving to the junior high, you know, they're gonna
Yeah.
get them in the next couple of
That's
years,
right.
but in their eyes, they were gonna get them right
Yeah.
away.
Yeah.
So I've heard a lot of that.
We get the
so-
little, I have to say this, we get the little ones, they'll be walking by my house, which everybody knows where I live. And they will come and knock on the door and say, I just wanted to say hi to Mr. Herbst, which they never want to say hi to me, which makes me sad. But yeah. Anyhow. All right. Moving on. Discussion items, May Leadership Institute. There was 3 of us there.
Yep.
A lot of good information. Yeah. You guys have anything particular you want
So
to?
the most interesting thing to me about that was that our job is policy and budget, right?
Mhm.
And we just sort of demonstrated that we're not totally engaged and clear on the budgeting process. And I know I've gotten through a minority of policies.
Mhm.
So I wonder whether we as a board should think about more, and I know it's time, and if my husband was hearing me, he'd hammer me, but maybe we need to set aside more time, at least quarterly, to have a learning session about our own selves and our district policy.
Mhm.
Agree.
Yeah, and that's you're right on that, Chris, absolutely. Because one thing that I've noticed since in my tenure on the board is policies. The policy is huge, and I'm a firm believer if we have policies, we should absolutely be following them because they're there for a variety of reasons, including our protection and protection from lawsuits and protection of everyone. And sometimes I think stuff falls through the cracks. Not intentionally, of course, but things are overlooked and they fall through the cracks. And that might be a good way to keep us up and running and making sure that everything's going as it should.
So in the past, and not just in this district, but I've done this before, we can certainly, it's hard to get everybody together to have another meeting or another work session or whatever, but we can certainly set aside, 15 to 20 minutes during our regular meeting, or maybe 30, if we can kind of stick to that and say, hey, we're going to go over budget, so we can take this piece of it. You can learn a little bit more about the codes. We can learn about how those income revenue sources, something like that, and then stick with that every month for a while until you guys are feeling more comfortable with that. But again, it adds 20, 30 minutes on the meeting, which is well worth it, I think, for education wise. In the same way with policy, we can certainly stick something in there to do that on a routine basis. I have no
Would be a good
problem with that.
idea.
I think that with technology and our use of it, and we're all skilled in it, that it really, for me, it would be better to have a dedicated quarterly or month, not a monthly, but maybe a quarterly time where we set out an hour or a 2-hour block and focused on a topic instead of adding it to a discussion when I'm already behind on trying to digest everything. So that would be my preference would be a dedicated session and using technology.
And I'll just tell you my experience with that. I think you would be better off to do small chunks more often than bigger chunks less often. I've just seen that over and over again because, you know, I mean, we kind of live in it every day where you don't. And if you're kind of more familiar, it becomes more routine and it stimulates more questions instead of trying to squeeze that, because that hour turns into 2 and then maybe 3. And you do that quarterly, it's a big chunk of time, where if we dedicate some time, you guys can certainly do it however you want. I'm just speaking to my past experience with it.
I would add another day monthly, even if it was, like I said, the same week as the board meeting, we did that Wednesday for an hour or something, you know, because what are we, Brian and I are 4 months in, 5 months in, and there's a lot to pick up in a short time frame.
And it takes a while because the learning curve is
so if we could speed that up, you know, the same night as a board meeting every month, do an extra hour.
You guys can make the call.
I'm all aboard.
Not the same night as a board meeting.
No,
Okay,
like the
thank you.
Wednesday, the same week.
Okay.
You know what I mean? If we have board meeting on Monday, then Wednesday we have a work session. And like you said, maybe we
Make it
just
regular.
make it
and
regular. And if you miss one, you miss one. But like you said, we should be able to log in most of the time from the computer if you can't attend. I think it'd be great for all of us.
Would that work for you guys?
Yeah,
I'm
Do
flexible.
you have a flexibility?
And Greg's not here,
I
so
don't,
he's
but
in, right?
Yeah.
If he doesn't show
I'll
up, he
vote for
doesn't get a
Drew.
vote. So
What position did he just assume? Yeah.
he's gonna lead those meetings monthly.
I'm good with that.
Cool, thank you.
So what I'll do, just so you guys kind of have that, I'll put together kind of a general topics so we can kind of work through those.
Yep.
So you can start with some of the basics and then kind of work up, you know, we'll look at revenue, we'll look at expenditures, we'll look at codes, we'll do some of those things. So
Great.
kind of get an agenda so we can work our way from the basics on up. We'll do a little finance class. Hey, Brian, Denise, Rebecca, would you like to teach that? When's your last finance class?
Okay.
Yeah, it might be good to have, you know, our directors in and like, you know, if
Some
we're
people
talking
that know.
transportation one night or maybe a principal one night or whatever, so they can, once we kind of get that handle of those basics, we can
I
expand on
think it'd
that.
be
So,
great.
yeah.
Spend an hour just
Yeah,
on elementary
Maybe
school,
meet
just
at
on
the bus garage
Yeah,
and-
there you go.
or wherever.
Cool, yeah, help us
Yeah.
be better.
Yes, please.
Yeah, because it's a lot to digest for us and we are a young board.
Oh, yeah.
I love it when I can say young in relationships or anything. It's great.
Whatever
But
works for you.
we are, for all intents and purposes, a pretty young board and there is a lot of things that, you know, we're under a learning curve on and it's a lot to digest.
It is.
All right.
But yeah, that's the second one I've attended in 6 months and I've picked up so much. So much
Yeah.
out of them. It's
Good.
amazing.
Yeah.
Good.
Okay. And policy, give us an update on the 2022 policy review.
Oh, yeah. So last meeting, we had a couple we skipped over because we weren't quite completed with them on attendance and those type of things. So we haven't had a chance to get our policy committee together because it was the last of school and we just couldn't make it work. So we're putting that out it'll be the week before our next board meeting and we'll get that together. And we also have some updates that came out, summer updates, and we'll be going through those as well. So be looking for those. Those should be at the July meeting. So I just wanted to bring that up because I know that was something we were going to follow through on this month. We just didn't get to it.
Okay. That works. That work for everybody?
Cool.
Okay. Now the data.
Sure.
I have to say, I love the way this is presented.
That's all Mindy right there.
Oh, is Mindy? Oh, Mindy's not here.
Yep, she is not here.
Oh,
so,
she's
She's done.
Yeah.
never again.
She's done.
Do we get to meet the new guy?
Yeah, when is
Yeah.
it next?
He actually is on vacation this week. He just texted me and said he was taking this week off.
Oh, 'cause
So
I-
he starts after July 1. His contract starts July 1,
Okay.
but he's on a contract similar to principal. So it'll be a few weeks before school and a few weeks after, but he'll be in probably
Yeah,
the
'cause I-
first part of August.
So maybe the August
Yeah.
meeting, we can meet them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Wouldn't
Yeah, and if
know-
he's in
wouldn't
before,
know
he
enough
said he
to-
wanted to attend some meetings, so he'll probably be here
Yeah,
in
that would
July.
be good.
Yeah.
I'd like to meet the
Yeah.
guy. But this is wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the data you have in front of you was not made public. The back pages, because there are some identifiers for students. So that's why we handed it to you instead of publicize that. But the front has a summary on it. And I think you guys can kind of see, where we're at on all those. And there's some growth in some areas and there's some struggles in some areas. And that's typically what we get, but we're seeing some recovery from COVID as well. Of course, the tests have changed a little bit as well compared to some previous year's data. So there's always something changing. It seems like we have trouble having consistent data throughout time. You
Yeah.
know,
It looks pretty good. There's still the math concern though. What?
Yep.
What is going on with that? It's just like
Yeah,
every year.
I wish I had a good answer for you.
Yeah, I think
I
that's the
think,
mystery to everybody. It's just
You know,
kind of
we've,
like, why?
we've put a lot into it.
Yeah.
We're seeing some great instruction. We're seeing some, and speaking from my building, we're seeing some great resources. We're seeing teachers participating in professional development above and beyond. We're doing lesson studies with other districts where teachers are getting together, because that's always an issue, is that you don't have a collaborative partner in your same grade level to help develop curriculum and do those kind of things. And so you're seeing, we're seeing a lot of really good things and kids coming out more confident. I think when we look at this data, we have to also understand this is a moment in time for ISAT particularly. I know for my building, we felt less of a desire by the students to do well on some of the ISATs. I think they're putting a little bit more emphasis in the maps is our hope, and that in the winter they didn't in the maps. But then in the spring, we saw a little more pride in that. And I think part of that is we're trying to build individualized goals for students based on the maps data, because it gives us a lot more feedback. So if you open up the maps document and go to grade 8 for mine. So if you go into my agenda, you can go into grade 8 there. Once you're there, just maybe let me know. You're good. Yeah. So one of the things we do, or I particularly do, is I look at, does this maps data coincide with the ISAT data? So if you look at the first category there for math, let's say in grade 8, and you have high, average, and high, and you have 29% of your students in that band. And then if you look at our grade 8 ISAT data, so you go to that's on your paper document there. We have 25% of the students that would be kind of in that range. So we're missing a couple kids there that probably should have been proficient on the ISAT and weren't. And so what you get on the ISAT is you get kind of these. So the yellow on that ISAT report there is what they call basic. On the maps data, that's more what they might consider average. But you also have to look at the RIT score. And so what the RIT score is, and I provided on mine there too, an explanation of kind of what that is, and kind of an easier way to break that down is it breaks it down by individual students. So you look at what you call kind of their zone of proximal development. And so, and I know this is a lot, but if you scroll down on the map score and go to where it actually breaks it down by standard, if you look at that, where it has the different color bands down there, it helps informs teachers' instruction. So like on this one here, and this is what we've seen pretty consistently, is we're low in statistics and probability. And so, we've really.
So in my map, I can't seem to get down.
So on the grade 8 report, it's a
Ah,
PDF.
okay, Next, I'm sorry, it has it.
You're good.
The sheet's different. Okay.
And so, you know, we see these different bands and we've tried to focus more on these things as well as incorporating into other content areas. So science is a good content area to focus on statistics and probability. And so they're doing some of that work in there. We're doing some cross-curricular units. We're
Gotcha.
doing some other things to really target specific areas. And that's really kind of the value in a lot of this data is it can inform instruction.
Mhm.
The other piece of that, which I was alluding to earlier, is creating student buy-in, which is tough. You know, student buy-in when it comes to standardized tests is always an issue. And I think we could do a better job with the ISAT. You don't want people teaching to the test, but I do think we didn't do a good enough job of helping students know how the questions were being asked, especially on the ELA portion, because there's key vocabulary in there that is specific more to the ISAT at times, that if they can identify what's being asked, so on the writing prompts, things like that, then we would probably see students who are better prepared to take it if they want to do well.
Gotcha.
If you look at the maps, so another thing I do is I look at individual students and see how much time they took. So their test duration, where they just a pick and click, and it will try and slow you down. But they can just kick back and, you know, start picking and clicking through. We see that a lot in 10th grade where they're like, oh, another test, especially in the spring when they're taking the ISAT and the maps and you're looking at a really extensive band of testing.
And it's spring.
In the spring,
Yeah.
both in the spring. And so you look at that, and then what I'll do is I'll cross-reference that to their ISAT and look at, okay, did they do the same thing? So is this student just completely checked out on any standardized testing because they don't see any value in it? And so we can address those at that level. The teachers, to get more buy-in, one of the things we're doing is trying to have them set more individualized goals. So pulling the students back to their desk while the students are doing a learning activity and really going over the data with the student and saying, okay, here's what we see. Then the kid will tell you, they'll say, well, yeah, I just didn't try. Or they'll say, you know, or they did try and they're like, wait, what the heck? I thought I did really well on that. And so then it really gives them an opportunity to talk to them about what standards they might be struggling in and what are some things that they can do or some things that the teacher can do to focus more of their curriculum in that area for some of those things.
Yeah.
The math, you know, we took a big jump about 3 years ago. I don't remember, Dr. Garrett, I think we were at like 18 to 22% was kind of the band that we were in. Then we hit up to this kind of 29 to 33 to 34%. And we're seeing a little bit of a plateau there. So we need to figure out how to get past that plateau. We also look at the longitudinal data. So is this group of students, have they been traditionally either from the elementary or with us struggling in these areas to meet their proficiency standards? And so is this a group of students who have been struggling, or is this a group of students who fell off really quickly for some reason? And when we encounter that, we're really left scratching our heads going, geez, what happened?
Could we still be seeing residuals from the time that we were out of school and doing school online too?
Yeah, I mean, you're always going to,
Yeah.
absolutely, especially in math. I mean, if you think about it, a whole quarter of potential learning loss I mean, these are things, even when the teachers got them in, they had to say, oh, geez, I just remembered they didn't get this.
Right. And math is so
And
hands-on for a
going
lot
back,
of kids too.
Yeah, and when you come off summer, you're reviewing anyway, because there's a whole lot of learning loss that takes place over a summer break. Combine that with a whole nother quarter on top of that. For a lot of these students, there wasn't a lot of academics taking place. So some of it I was actually really happy with. The ELA.
The ELA scores are good.
Some, yeah. And some of them, we thought they'd do better. There were students who did go down that we were kind of going, and we asked them and they didn't answer the question. So on the writing prompt, they answered it incorrectly. They tried, but they didn't read it correctly. And then it's a what do they call that? AI. So it's a AI program that grades these. And so if they don't pick out key vocabulary in that, because the student might ask for argumentative, but they did a narrative, and they will, so then all of a sudden it'll be a 0, like no grade on that. But the student wrote something really nice, they just didn't address it correctly. So we saw some of that. The only reason I include the students on this for you guys is so that you kind of see how it breaks it down for each individual student. So it's not just doesn't just inform our grade level, it gives individual feedback on each kid to help them build those goals. And within the program, you can print a sheet and it autofills that data for the student for a specific goal sheet for them to try to make their growth measure. Yeah, I guess the last thing to note would be on the maps, if they get a question right, it increases in, so it's a adaptive test. So it's not the same questions for all kids. If they get a question correct, it will increase the rigor on the next question. And so it tries to keep them within a band, but pushing them up rather than just saying this is the same test for all kids. Yeah, I guess questions.
Yeah, it looks like the ELA scores were.
Yeah, but we're traditionally like 20% to 15% over
Higher.
state average in 7th and 8th grade, and we weren't. And so we were a little bit wondering why that was.
And I didn't bring my binder to review, but compared to last year, where are we?
For my building, I think we're down a little bit. I do. For the ISAT, for the maps, we're up. We're seeing more growth. We saw kids with 20 points growth and they're only projected to have 2 or 3.
Nice.
And they're really proud of it. So that's neat.
So it might be the
Because that's what we're
ISAT.
looking for. I think they just don't see a lot of value in it. You know, and it's always a slippery slope to incentivize it or to say, hey, you do this and you get a party or do something like that, because it's always the philosophical struggle of intrinsic value versus extrinsic reward for performing. And so it's tough to really get a lot of buy-in. The maps, they're now seeing that it dictates their placement. So now that we have integrated classes, they tend to want to maybe get an additional elective or do something like that. So they're like, okay, they're actually looking at this and it's going to dictate some of my class placement or my opportunities to do things that I want to do. So I don't need potential intervention. So I think they're seeing, maybe some of them are seeing a correlation with their classes that are being offered. Because if I take this, it doesn't really matter and we put in the same class no matter what, then they care less.
Do you see that logic pattern, that trend increasing with age, with student grade? I mean, so coming in
No.
7th grade,
I think 7th and 8th grade, you see 7th graders typically give you a little bit more effort, because you could tell a 7th grader to go run laps and they'll say, I'll race you. Tell an 8th grader to go run laps and they'll be like, you know, so it's just a mentality shift. But 10th grade, I don't know, it's hit or miss. They're wise enough to figure out, are we doing this for a reason? What's the end goal with this data?
All that depends on the class and you get to that grade too. I mean, like their dynamics in that 10th grade class, this age.
Well, I mean, I was just wondering, just based on what you just said, is that they're understanding that what maps can do for them. So, you know, are you getting more of a buy-in? And you're saying no.
We're seeing more growth with the low kids who are in the
Interesting.
who might be doing some integrate or do some intervention, because they think they want to show that they don't, that they've done the work and they don't need it. The kids who are going to be placed in those the higher classes or whatever anyway, based on their academic performance, some of them, you get about 15%, they're going to do good on they're going to do their best on no matter what you give them. And then you have a band of about 40% that depends on the day when they'll give it to you, know, so.
Well, that's.
So I'm sure you think about this and incentivizing, and we talked about it from the attendance standpoint of incentivizing
Growth.
growth.
So one of the teachers that saw a lot of really positive growth, basically, which I agreed with, said, if you show this amount of growth, then you don't have to do this last thing, academic task, because you're showing that you worked hard enough and you're proficient or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And which makes sense. If you're showing that you can do it and you're working hard on this assessment to show us you can do it, then why are we just throwing more stuff at you to do?
Right.
And so the kids are like, really? So they kind of felt to them like they're maybe cheating a little bit. Like if they do really well, they might have to do this, not have to do this assignment, but really that's philosophically makes sense to me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So are we looking at putting that across the board?
We're gonna have that discussion next year to look at that. The difficult part with maps is it's fall, winter, and spring. And so what do you take off in the fall? What do you take off in the winter? Whether, the spring is kind of the one where is the more end all be
More
all, which I
potential.
think is why we saw some of those 18 to 25 point growth in the spring, because it was there.
And we've always heard the concern from teachers and from parents of, is the kid, are they getting over tested?
Yeah.
Is there too much time?
In the
being
spring, they
allowed to
did.
test
They
them?
are.
You know,
In the spring, they are.
which I'm sure 16-year-old's gonna look at it and go, yeah, I don't know if I want to do, yeah.
When you're tired, I
Yeah.
mean, that's a lot of testing. Your mind can only engage in that kind of thing for so long. I don't care if you're a 15-year-old kid or an adult. It's just, that's a lot. to
Yeah.
Try to engage in.
Yeah, it is.
I think it'll be fun to look at this in relationship to some of our vertical integration work that you're doing and talking about between grades and see if we can, over, say, a 5-year period, or maybe it's a 10-year period. I don't know what that trend needs to be, but to see if we start to see increases.
Yeah. And maybe we just have a group of kids who just aren't good at math. And I can relate. I mean,
Well, smartphones, I mean, I hate to say it,
Yeah.
I'd say it makes you dumber, because, I mean, math was my favorite subject, and it's probably one of my weaker ones now because of the technology around.
Your
I don't
mom
know.
would spank you.
She would. My mom's a math teacher, that's why
yeah, I
my
was
math
gonna
was
say,
very
what
good.
the heck?
So I think it would be interesting for the presentation of data next year is to have years comparison
Mhm.
so that we can look at, is some of this stuff working that we're doing?
So the data picture that I share with you guys a couple times a year, and I didn't this spring because we sort of went with a little bit different format, but that does have
Mhm.
years comparison. So you can track cohorts
Right.
from year to year if you want to. And that's one of the things that we tend to look at because we test every year at the elementary level. We can track those cohorts and make sure we're seeing growth from grade level to grade level. And if we don't see adequate growth, we can start, trying to figure out why.
So what did that show this year for you? Or didn't you don't look at it?
We saw consistent growth. We saw some areas where we can also dig in and figure out how we can improve.
And they mirrored here?
With that.
Are those areas of positive and negative mirrored
Yeah,
here?
you can
Okay.
see it in the data. Yeah, absolutely. One of the things we also look at is trend in the state averages
Mhm.
with the ISAT. So if we're seeing a dip from, third grade to fourth grade, we look to see if that trend is true across the state. And if it is, then, we know it's not necessarily something we can fix, but we can still dig in and try to figure out why. And if it's not a trend that we're seeing, but it's happening in our school, even more so, we can dig in and as a team with the teachers and look at what we can do different.
It's interesting data. It's interesting just to see it. Like I say, looked at that math and went, that's the same. I mean, it's been the same with that same group of kids.
Yeah, one of the things if you've had any kids have came up or that are engaged in our math programs, it's really had a shift towards more inquiry-based math. So knowing why they're doing it, looking at problems from multiple angles. So they give them the problem, they look at different ways to solve that problem, then present their way to solve that problem rather than root memorization of formulas. So just the drill, you used to call it the drill and kill. So it's just, this. The drill and kill will get you immediate better results on your ISAT, but it won't be lasting. And so what they're finding is that you don't want the pendulum to swing too far towards the inquiry, and you don't want it to be just strict rote memorization, drill and kill. There's somewhere in between there, and finding that sweet spot has been a real difficulty, because if you're just doing inquiry, but you can't do the basic math to come to the right solution, it doesn't matter,
No.
right? You can know why you're doing it, but if you don't have the correct number, it doesn't matter. On the other side of that, if you're just doing the rote memorization, those formulas don't stay because they don't know why they're, they don't know why the math is happening, I guess is the best way to put that.
Yeah.
And so we're seeing that it's kind of balancing out in the middle on that pendulum. And so I'm hoping that will help also.
Yeah, You're describing my frustration with higher math to the T.
Yeah, well, and like you were saying though, just doing a mass one, it's not that you still get the result. You know, I use spreadsheets all the time. So Excel does it for you, right? You build the formulas,
Right.
It does it for you. It's like a smartphone. It's the same thing, you know, if you know how to get the results, but
Mhm.
yeah, so that is a one that I think you have to be doing, or so missing school is definitely hard on that.
Mhm.
I will say the elementary level test fatigue is a real thing.
Yeah.
We struggle to find a correlation between our students' performance on the MAP assessment and their performance on the IRI or the ISAT. We typically put a little more emphasis on the tests that the state look at. And so we administer those first in the spring, and then we administer the MAP assessment last, which could be part of it. I think we're wearing them out by the time they get to the MAP assessment, and they're long tests for little
Yeah,
kids.
sure.
So our kindergartners are taking the IRI and the MAP assessment, but our third graders are taking the IRI, the MAP assessment, and the ISAT in all subjects. So we are definitely testing them. But trying to find a correlation where all that data overlaps to give us some consistency, we're still looking for that in the data.
Definitely some positives though. I mean, we're ahead of the state and or close to the state at most grades,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and we're up more than we're down, I guess, if you look at the average.
And I can speak to the IDYC influence on even the district and the state level data, because when you speak about ISATs in my population, it's not really an equitable way to look at things, because we have them for 5 months and they're technically all the kids that were not proficient from all of the schools in the state in one place and then tested. So a much better way to assess and really look at the growth of my population is that TABE data I provided for you guys, that adult basic education. That's an assessment they take right at the beginning with us and then at the end. So it really assesses that growth. Like I said, my students, if you look at them in the 10th grade report for math on here, probably don't help our overall district data due to the
Sure.
fact that that's not really how the ISAT was used to assess students. We don't even have them for the full school year. Most of those kids were dropped out before they came to us in many cases. So like I said, keep that. That'll give you guys some context with their the overall
Yeah.
state and district numbers. I look at, the 10th grade ELA, and I think that potentially if you take out my population, that would even be even higher for that tip, because you saw that Timberline and Orofino did really well in test.
Kind of unfair to test them.
It is,
But
but
that's
it's
required.
required.
That's what I was gonna say.
They did make some
Interesting.
adjustments now that they're gonna test different grade levels now, which that'll be interesting, because now it's gonna be those 11th graders,
Okay.
which I have a ton of. So there's gonna be some, like I said, I would take the ISAT, it might even be interesting for our own evaluation as a district to remove IDYCA and have both to look next to, like,
Yeah,
okay, this is with
yeah.
IDYCA and then this is Orofino and Timberline and OES, just for basic comparison, and also looking at those curriculum implementations in those buildings, just because it's a little different.
That's a great point.
But you
Yeah.
can definitely see, like I said, with some of the curriculum work that we're doing, the TABE growth with some of our students, we saw some nice growth with all of our kids. That's just this cycle too. So that's just these kids we had this last 5 months. When I went over it in January, with some of you that were here, I did my group from before. So just for context.
Perfect.
So I'm wondering on the Timberlines map data that we have, it seems like there's a little bit higher. Is that simply because we have a smaller student population? They're getting a little bit more hands-on.
Math or ISAT?
Math.
Don't have that.
So as you know, for fewer kids, it takes less variance to make more of an extreme difference. So, I can't speak to that exactly either, but it very well could be because there's fewer students as well.
That can go vice versa too. So if he has a few kids that tank like on the ISAT,
Can really pull you
it's
down.
gonna.
Right, it's gonna
Yeah.
blow you, yeah.
Absolutely.
This and then like this,
Yep.
so you have, I
Separates it much more.
I'd have to ask Jason, I think. If I had a smaller testing environment, there's only testing maybe 10 kids in a room. I think we might get a little more buy-in.
When I can speak to that a little bit, I taught the 9th and 10th
Yeah.
grade levels when I was at Timberline and 7th. And it is a hit or miss with that. I had a group of 10th graders, there was 9 of them. So it's like, they're either gonna do really well based on the numbers, or you have 2 kids that don't do well and all of a sudden your percentage is a mess.
Right.
But I think that looking at all of the groups, like that sizing is going to be predictive in the ISAT and as with maps. That 10th grade group they have right now, I think is one of their larger group class sizes that they have. When I had them, there was 18 of them, which is a fairly big group for Timberline. So I don't know how many they have now, but so that's a bigger group. Kind of hard to find.
Yeah, I mean, I just think about some of the demographic and social economic challenges that youth face up there, and they've done well in the map. So I wanted to celebrate that.
Well, that leadership in me, I don't know if you guys talked
Leader
about
in
last,
Me,
or leader in me,
Yeah.
that was impressive.
Mhm.
Attending that and seeing from kindergartners all the way to seniors, what they were doing. From graduating from there, just to see that, I had no clue, and it was really enjoyable to see.
Do you have any questions about the data she presented on the IRI? Are you all okay with reading those graphs?
Honestly, I just blow right over it because I don't understand it.
Yeah.
So if you're willing.
You
That'd be
bet.
awesome.
So the Idaho reading indicator is mandatory for kindergarten through 3rd grade. And our goal is to make sure by the time our students leave 3rd grade that they're reading at a benchmark level. So that's all based on foundational skills for the most part. So what you're seeing in these graphs are monthly. This is a growth. These are growth results for the school year. So if you look at the bottom, you can see sort of where the district students performed in September and then where they performed in October by grade level.
What are the tiers?
So the tiers, if you see students that perform in the green are at benchmark. If they perform in the yellow, they're what we consider strategic. So they require some intervention with foundational skills. If they perform in the red, they require some intensive interventions to try to help make sure that, we won't lose them by the time they get to 3rd grade. So if you look at where we started in September as a district and then look at where we finished in May as a district, you can see some pretty significant growth in the area of foundational reading skills. I can tell you at OES alone, our kindergartners made 109% growth this school year from fall to spring. Statewide average was 58%.
Oh, wow.
So we're really
Wow.
focusing on trying to make sure we've got solid readers by the time they leave us in 3rd grade. That's one thing that we're pretty adamant about. And that's where we have a really strong focus right now on
Cool.
literacy. I think in my report, I mentioned that we are inviting new incoming kindergartners to our summer reading kickstart program. We were able to identify some students with our kindergarten readiness assessment that could use just a little bit of work and some foundational skills as they're coming into kindergarten. So we're excited about that opportunity to get them in a couple weeks before school starts and spend some individual time with them
Awesome.
on foundational skills.
Cool. All righty. Anybody else have anything? Good information.
Very good.
All right. Thanks, you guys. I feel like I could do better on an ISAT now.
I'm just glad I don't take them.
All right. So moving on to our action items. First action item is our bus bids.
You comfortable with them?
So really the change, and you can speak to this if you'd like, Derek, but I know that, we kind of got put against the wall on this. We already approved the bids
Mhm.
back in December, was it?
December.
Yeah. So this $3,500 increase for each bus, we ran it by our attorney. We talked to him a little bit and said, hey, is this legal? Can they do this? And his reply was, you're probably cheaper to go ahead and just pay it than to try to fight it. So that's where we stood.
Did they say what the increase was for?
Labor shortages, supply chain problems, increase in costs. If you notice on that second sheet, they projected if we rebid those buses and redid them right now, it'd be 140,000, not 123. That's just the increase that they have seen since we bid.
So it's not surprising.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Nope, I think it's our way best option to accept the $3,500 and get them, because if we tried to rebid, we'd probably be a year getting them. They say they'll be by the end of the year, and
Maybe.
we'll probably pay $150,000 for them.
Yeah.
And can we get them?
Yeah.
You know,
There's that
Yep.
too.
So it's my recommendation.
Go with the
They
sure
gave us a
thing.
quick deadline. We're asking for forgiveness on the fact we had to respond and say, yeah, we're not going to cancel our bid. We need you to approve that. Yeah, that you're good with that too.
Yeah.
And remind me what percentage we actually pay for versus what is reimbursed.
They put them on a depreciation system. So for 12 years, it's a declining balance depreciation, and they reimburse up to 85%. But that's basic bus. And so the funny thing about that is when you look at it, you just don't take and say that costs 85%. When they're reimbursing for the last one we bought last year, because of the way we spec'd it out, their actual reimbursement amount is more than we paid for the bus because of the way their screwy state system figures out their basic bus. So there are some options that we order that aren't
Keep doing
reimbursed,
that,
or
Derek.
some
Yeah.
options we order that are. It's crazy.
Yeah. Whatever you're doing, just keep on doing
So,
that.
yeah.
Do that.
But anyway, yeah, so we're just asking you guys for the formality when we send this off to the state for the depreciation. They require minutes of the board meetings where we approved them and all that. We're saying, hey, you know what, just to cover our bases, will you guys approve that you're good to go ahead and allocate that extra
So
money?
just for clarification, what are we approving?
We're
Just
approving this. It's basically
the- 3,500
each, 7,000 total.
An increase
two
on the
buses.
original bid of
On the original bid.
$3,500.
Of the
piece.
original bid we accepted in
Okay.
December.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense. Somebody else gotta make the motion. Okay, can we get a motion then?
I'll make a motion that we accept the bus bid increase of 7,3,500 per bus as stated.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Aye, motion carried. Okay, moving on to the next one, the trust transfers, which we have discussed that prior to
Yeah,
this.
so we finally have an entity that's going to take both of these. So we just need to move these over to them to manage it, and that is the boosters. So really, kind of where we got into the bind on this is we're not able, you guys as a board are not able to make decisions on these trusts. So it has to have a governing board. It just can't go to whoever. So with the recommendations of Mr. Lee and his staff, they will make that recommendation, and then that board will actually have that proven record of that. So that we will move that over. Still, we're going to transfer the money over to the high school so they handle it locally, and then they can make those checks and payments or whatever. But we have to write a check from the district to the high school in the name of that trust. Make sense?
Boosters Group is willing to accept that responsibility.
Yep, 10,000 earmarked for the music program.
Yep.
And 10,000, or excuse me, 5,000.
Five, yep.
Earmarked for athletics, which is going to go towards a standalone sound system in the gymnasium that will actually save us costs in the long run.
A shot clock.
Moving our sound system all over the place.
Heard that's a thing.
Causes more damage.
Good thing.
We're getting there.
It just has been used for a lot of what I think it has a standalone
Don't
system. Makes more sense.
Okay, any other questions on that?
Yeah, glad to get rid of it.
Not yours
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
Mine either.
Okay, can I get a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to accept the trust transfer of totaling $15,000. That'll go to
Boosters.
Booster Committee. Yep. Present on the agenda.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carried. Okay, Pierce property. Something else we've discussed before.
Yes, we have been through this many times. So kind of a little back history with a couple of you that are new. So there's a lot in Pierce right next to City Hall that we own. From what I understand, it's been ours forever. I don't even know why, how, whatever. But anyway, the city has been parking their equipment on it. There's snow removal on it. There's electricity on it. It's an open lot. And they have asked to purchase that. So we went through the process to try to get this figured out how we could do it. The one piece that is missing is an appraisal. I've tried, and I told you guys that I've tried many times to get this appraisal done. It was going to cost about $3,500 to do an appraisal on a $20,000 lot at the time. Now, we know that those prices have probably increased and the appraisals probably increased, but I did go to one of their meetings. It's been about a year and a half ago, and the agreement was that we would sell it to them for $25,000, which is what you guys are seeing, what I attached to there, and with $5,000 lease to own payments for the 5 years. So that's where we're at with that. It's been through our attorneys, it's been through their attorneys, and that's where we ended up. It finally, there were some exchanges through that went to spam and those type of things. Things got delayed, missed, those types. So we've been trying to work on that and get that cleaned up. We currently don't have any reason to have that property. It is kind of landlocked, and it would be beneficial for them to have it. They do utilize it right now, but they would like to own it, and eventually they would like to put a covered pole barn so they can put their equipment under a roof, which makes sense. So any questions? Or like I said, I know a couple of you are kind of new on this one, but this has kind of been in the works for probably a year and a half, maybe more.
I'll move to approve the lease to own agreement with the city of Pierce for a total of $25,000.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Nay.
Motion carried. Okay. Now we move on to the budget.
Madam Chair, I'll move that we approve the fiscal year 2022 budget amendments as presented.
I'll second.
Do we have any further discussion? No. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. Okay, moving on to the FY23 proposed budget.
I'll move we accept the FY 2023 proposed budget as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay. We're gonna, do we want to do, or we want to do executive now?
Have any questions on new hires? There won't be any motions.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. Okay. So anybody have any questions or concerns on the new hires and separate? Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. So do we have any, well,
Just a
do we
couple
need to?
questions
Well,
on
we
new
can do
hires.
it, we could do it executive
Yeah, it's about.
for the hires,
Yes,
but
we
it's
can.
just if we have, so we'll come back out and
Okay,
we'll have to
perfect.
come back out and do that then.
So you want to do that?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So at this time, I need a motion for us to move into executive session with a roll call. Mhm.
I don't.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn to executive session per Idaho code 74206 A and F. 1A and F.
I'll second that.
Can we get a roll call?
Yes.
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 It's gonna be past my bedtime.
Okay,
Okay, we're back up.
okay, back in, do we need to roll? Call? No, or do we? No, okay. We're back in session out of executive. I need a motion for the new hires and separations. 10.
I'll move to approve the new hires and separations as presented.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Any board member input for future agendas?
Yeah, we're going to talk about the attendance policy and it wasn't on the agenda, so.
Yeah, so that was one of the policies that I said we would be reviewing in July. It's a piece that, so we have to have it through our policy committee. We didn't get together to finish that.
I thought it was just because we needed to read it.
No.
No,
Oh,
we
okay.
we were
Next
gonna
month.
make sure we had the wording correctly
Okay.
on it as well. Yep. Yeah, little nuances we have to do. Yep.
Yeah.
And meeting,
Yeah.
next meeting.
And we
Oh.
want to have a meeting.
Yeah, a meeting on June
June 30th.
June
at
30th
noon.
at noon
At the elementary.
at the
And
elementary
it'll be
school.
executive only, correct?
Yes, executive only.
Okay, I will get that posted.
If nothing else, meeting is adjourned.